Hey guys, this is Wojtek, and today we're going to take a look at creating some destructible props for our character to interact with. Specifically, we're going to create a base class that allows us to extend it and create these various destructible props, like that sphere we just blew up. Likewise, we're going to be able to turn this rock into something that gets smashed around when we interact with it, specifically when we kick and punch it. And look at it go. And then lastly, we're also going to look at creating triggers. So when we run by specific objects, they blow up without user intervention. So let's get started. Alright, so before we go ahead and create our destructible mesh, the first thing we have to do is turn on the Apex Destruction plugin. By default, the Unreal Engine, I believe has a version 4.18, doesn't come with it turned on, so you just have to go into Settings, Plugins, and then under Built-in, look for Destruction. And you'll notice the Apex Destruction plugin, which is disabled, so just turn it on and restart your editor. Okay, there's our editor restarted. Now, because you most likely don't want to be doing this every time for every new project, I will post a link below to my blog where I'd explain how you can do this permanently and then have this thing on by default. Now, the second thing we have to do after we turn on plugin is actually bring in the header definitions to the destructible module within our C++ project. And to do so, what we're going to do is go to our props 01 build CS file, or whatever, .build or build.cs file you're using, and right around head mounted display, we're going to say Apex Destruction. And this is going to allow us to use the actual destructible component within our C++ code. So let's rebuild and now start implementing our components. Okay, so our project is rebuilt and we are pretty much good to go. So let's go ahead and we're going to close down these classes, and we're going to go back to our editor and we're going to create a new class that we're just going to call, so it's going to be a new class of type actor. That's what our props are going to be, and we are going to create a new directory called props, because we're going to have a bunch of these different types of props. And we're going to say this is going to be our destructible prop. Let's create that class and now start fleshing out our object definition. Okay, so there's our class created. Now, before we start adding in some properties to this, let's go back to our editor and actually take a look at creating one of these destructible meshes now that our plugin's turned on and our project is compiling stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the starter content folder, head down to props, and I'm going to take this pillar. I'm going to right click on it, and then I have this option here of create destructible mesh. Without the plugin turned on, you wouldn't see this. But now that we have it available, let's just click that, and we see our destructible mesh. Or rather, it's not destructible just yet, but it will be very, very shortly. Now, let me just organize my tabs here before we get too far, and I'm also going to create a new folder under our tutorial resources called props. And I'm going to take that pillar that we just created, this guy right here, and I'm just going to pop him into this folder, just so we have things kind of organized nicely. Okay, let's go back to this pillar. Now, what can we do with this? So there's a whole whack of different properties on the right-hand side under destructible settings, as well as you're going to get perhaps some details around chunk parameters later. But let's just focus on the destructible bits first. So there's a whole bunch of stuff up here: damage threshold, damage spread, enable impact damage. And this guy's kind of important because this is going to register hits for our mesh. So if we have this guy turned on, you'll notice by default it says, hey, upon collision, apply 0.1 damage against our destructible object. And we're going to mess around with these values later. But right now we'll just leave it as 0.1. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we're going to leave alone for right now. But let's also take a look at some of these things here under effects, for example. So effects allow us to specify a particle system as well as a sound for when our object is destroyed. So for sake of experimentation, let's add in an explosion and a sound of explosion Q. So this way, when this guy breaks apart, he should trigger this particle as well as the sound effect. Now, we haven't actually fractured anything yet, but we will in just a second. But first, let's keep going. So we also have materials under the skeletal mesh, And you'll notice by default, it's just applying the world grid material. Let's add something a little bit nicer looking. So I think there's a cement or cinder, steel. Okay, let's go with the steel. Okay, and there's our mesh all textured. Now you'll notice we also support multiple material slots on this mesh, and that is because certain meshes, and we'll break this apart. Actually, here, why don't we fracture it first, and I'll show you what I mean. So this allows us to fracture the mesh, and this explode amount, lets us sort of float back and forth between it. Now, these additional material definitions basically allow the mesh to have an external material as well as an internal one for all these various chunks. Now, not all meshes allow for this behavior, and you can read the documentation for more details around that, but that's roughly how it plays out. 0 is external, 0 is external, 1 is going to be the internal faces of all of your chunks. Okay, so we'll leave this alone for now. You also have some LOD settings that you can play around with, and then we get down to this bit down here around the cell site count, and this is basically how many chunks do I want to break up my mesh into. So right now we have it set to 25. We can set this to 2 and refracture our mesh, and then you'll notice it's just kind of broken in half. The other thing to notice is this random seed. Now what the random seed allows you to do is basically say, okay, well, I like this break. I like how it always breaks apart in this way, and if I have similar meshes of this size, I can leave my cell site count at 2 and my random seed at 0, and I will always reproduce this mechanic. If I change my random seed to, let's say, 24, it's just a random number that kind of repositions things. You'll notice, actually, let's make this a little bit more random. Let's do a 3 and 24. So we have the top bit, the middle bit, and the bottom bit. If we revert the random seed and we fracture our mesh again, you'll notice they just change slightly. The positioning gets randomly adjusted based on that seed. If we go back to 24, we're kind of back to our original space. So let's break this apart into a few more chunks. I don't know, let's go 30. And we'll see what that looks like. That's not bad. The top bit's a little too uniform, so let's just mess around with a couple of different seeds to see how it breaks apart. And that's much better. Look at that. Nicely split it up into all kinds of chunks. Okay, so let's save that destructible mesh, and now we can just simply drop it into the level. And you'll notice, by default, it just sits there, but, disregard this line trace, if we run into it, we generate that impact damage, and the thing actually falls apart. Pretty cool. But we don't always want it to fall apart just when we run into it. We actually want it to, for example, trigger our kicks or our punches. Bam! Look at that. And that was almost no work on our part. All I did is I took this mesh, just kind of added a little bit of material to it, made a couple of adjustments specifically for the impact damage, and then included a particle system and explosion sound effect. The other thing we can do with these destructible meshes, similar to our static meshes, is if we make it go a little bit higher, and then we say simulate physics, you'll see it falls apart, gets impact damage from hitting the floor, and then just breaks up into individual chunks. Cool. That's basically a lot of the hard work done for us. But what we're going to do now is create a blueprint out of our base or our destructible prop, and we're going to add a whole bunch of different properties that allow us to control how this thing breaks apart and sort of how much damage is applied, whether or not there's a trigger that makes this thing fall apart, or if it's just based on our player damage. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so going back to the code, now we're going to start adding in a little bit of logic to our destructible mesh, or our destructible prop, that allow us to control how it breaks apart, specifically by impact and also by doing an overlap event with a trigger box and then just kind of falling apart from there. So what do we need to do that? Well, we're going to start off by bringing in our destructible component. So we're going to go to the destructible prop.h, and we're going to bring in the destructible component h. And this is the guy that comes in from our build CS apex destruction inclusion right there. Okay, so we bring in this component, and now we start defining it the way we, normally would any other sort of property for our player. So we're going to go to the public section, and we're now going to define a couple of functions to begin with. So we're going to look at, we're going to say damage. We're also going to say trigger, and we're also going to say destroy. So damage is going to be our method that takes effect when we hit something or something else hits one of our objects. Trigger is going to be available to us when we overlap with a specific trigger box for this component. And then destroy is going to be called by both of these two guys depending on certain conditions. And this is actually going to trigger the impact damage on the destructible mesh and make it fall apart. Okay, so we'll leave these methods alone for now. We're going to start fleshing them out in just a second. But now we need some components on our actor. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new U-box component. And this is going to be our trigger component. And I'm just going to decorate this as a U property. U property, and we're going to say it's visible anywhere. Actually, blueprint, read only. Our category is going to be destructible. Okay, so there is our trigger component, and this is what's going to allow us to handle this method. Another thing we have to do is actually bring in our destructible component. So this is going to be our destructible component, and it's going to be the same U property definition. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. And what else? So we have a destroy method, so we probably want to catch is something destroyed. So we're going to say is destroyed, and this is going to be a U property, and we're going to allow the modification of defaults as well as blueprint read only, and category is destructible. Okay. So we've got destroyed. What else do we need? We need a health. So this is going to be the attribute that defines the default health allocation to our prop. And we also need a current health. This is going to be the representation of what is actually happening with our object as health decreases. Okay. And we're going to decorate those properties. Well, what else do we need? There's probably a couple things we want to explore as part of this. There's damage. So we know that with damage we have a damage amount. So let's create a float for damage amount. And we're also going to add another float for impulse strength. And you know what? Let's say default damage. So the impulse is important because our on-hit events are going to carry over the normal of where we connected as well as the direction of the hit. So then we can apply the impulse correctly against our object and make the chunks kind of fly out in the direction of where the hit occurred. Okay, so that's a whole bunch of properties that we're going to start playing with. Oh, and actually, you know what? We're going to do another one. Because we have trigger here, we may want destructible meshes that don't allow for triggering. Perhaps they are just destructible on their own, and there is nothing sort of causing them to get blown up if we enter their proximity. Okay, so is trigger enabled, and this is going to be the same thing. Okay, so we have a bunch of those properties. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need. No, I think we're okay. So let's go ahead and now start implementing these definitions. And we're also going to go back and fix up these methods in just a second. But let's start off with creating our actual component definitions. So our root component is going to be a create default subobject, and we're going to say use scene component. And the reason, sorry about that, use scene component. There we go. And the reason we want to define this guy as our root is because the destructible components don't always allow for ease of attachment of other components onto it. Not quite sure why, it's just they're different than all of the other components. So if we have this root one, or sorry, this scene component, then we can attach things onto it and kind of ignore the state of the destructible component. So with our destructible component, we're also going to create a new default subobject for this guy, and he's going to be of type U destructible component. And we're going to say destructible component. Our destructible component is going to be attached to our root component. And the only other thing we're going to do is we're going to say set notify rigid body collision to true. And what this guy does, if you recall from our previous tutorials, is the weird, just remember this name, it's the weird name for when we look at our other objects, is this guy right here, simulate generate hit events. So what this guy allows us to do is when there's physics enabled on an object, it will still register hit events for the things we're interacting with. So we're just going to turn it on by default for a destructible component because I want to make them enable physics by default. Okay, so our next component is going to be a trigger component. And we're going to create a new default subobject. And that's just a box component. Nothing special about this guy. It's going to be a trigger component. So the idea is we'll walk into an area and something will happen to our destructible mesh. And our trigger component is going to be attached to our scene component. Or rather, our root component. Okay, so those guys are set up. Now let's say some default values, or let's set some default values for our parameters. So is destroyed is false, is trigger enabled is false by default. Our max health is going to be 10 by default. Our default damage is going to be 1 by default, and our default I think it was impulse is going to be 1 by def. All right, so we have some default values, and we have some of our components attached to our actor. Now let's go ahead and start initializing some of the calls to our various components, specifically the onComponent hit and the onComponent begin overlap for our trigger component. So let's go ahead and define those guys. So we're going to say destructible component onComponent hit. We're going to say add dynamic, and this is now going to take our current object as well as our damage method. Now remember, this is going to complain because we actually haven't defined the proper signature for our damage method, but we'll do that in just a second. So the other thing we have to do is our trigger component. And with this guy, we're going to say on component begin overlap, add dynamic, And we're going to say trigger. Cool. Oh, and we also have to say current health equals max health just whenever the player is spawned. Or sorry, whenever the prop is spawned. Alright, cool. Now, let's go ahead and get the signatures for trigger damage. Destroy so far is just going to be a void one, but we'll fix that in a second. So if you recall, a quick way of getting at the definitions for these delegate methods is if you step into, let's say, on component hit, it will take you to the F component hit signature, and then if we look for that, it will give us this method signature right here. So I can simply just take these method parameters, excluding the first one, go back to my header file, and for damage, just simply paste it in and then get rid of the extra commas. Cool, so there's our damage, and now let's do the same thing for our trigger. So that's the begin overlap signature, which we have right here. And I'm just going to take all those method parameters and pop them into our trigger method. That and that. Okay, so there we have it. There's our damage and our trigger. And now let's go ahead and implement these methods. So let's say damage, and autocomplete's kind enough to fill that up for us. And then let's do trigger. And again, everything is filled up nicely. So I'm also going to include engine.h so we can print out when these methods are being called. And to do so, what we're going to do is say g engine add on screen debug message, and we'll say 1 flow time to display, let's say 5 seconds, and display color, let's say we'll go with orange, and our debug message is just going to be the function name. Actually, no, let's make this 3 seconds, a little bit shorter. Okay, so there are those method definitions. Now let's recompile, make sure we didn't miss anything, and keep going. Okay, our project is recompiled, so let's take a look at our blueprint before we go a little bit further with defining these damage, trigger, and destroy methods. So going back to our Unreal editor, let's go ahead and create a new blueprint. Now based off of our Destructible prop. So there's our new class. We'll create a new blueprint, and this is going to be our Destructible pillar. And let's see what this guy looks like. So you'll notice there's our root scene component. Our class definitions have our various properties defined. I'm going to leave those alone for just right now. But now we can go ahead and add in our destructible mesh, as well as start fleshing out this trigger area. So destructible component, on the right hand side, if you pick your destructible mesh, you'll notice our pillar is already available. And there it is. And then our trigger component, let's just make it a little bit bigger. And let's just realign it a little bit. So if our thing is there, let's do that there, and there we go. So it's roughly in the center, and if someone crosses over this area, it should cause our destruction to occur. Cool. So we're also going to turn on physics for our pillar for this particular scenario. And let's save it and drop it into a level just to make sure everything is still working okay. So there's our destructible pillar. I'm going to bring it up, get rid of our static mesh, and see what happens. So there we go. Everything still works. The pillar falls down as expected. if we go ahead and lower it, and then we turn off physics, it should just stand still, but when we run into it, it should still break apart. And there it goes. Cool. Halfway there. Okay, so let's go back to our code and start figuring out how we can actually make this thing not fall apart when we touch it, but rather when we hit it. So to do so, what we're going to do is we're going to start determining who is actually creating damage against this this particular element. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to say if is not destroyed, so we want to make sure the object is still available to us. We're also going to say if other component, so the thing that is actually causing us damage, if the component has a tag of weapon, this is the only time we actually want to trigger a particular damage event. And if you recall, on our player character, we define these two collision boxes. One is for the left side and one's for the right side. And what we're going to do is we're going to tag them as weapons, and then when they collide with our destructible mesh, they should cause enough damage and have the thing kind of fall apart. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to say if this is if it's not destroyed and it is of type weapon, let's now start accumulating damage on this thing. So we say current health, and this is just a shorthand, minus equals, to subtract 1 from itself. An alternative way of writing that would be current health minus 1. So whatever's easier for you, either way, we just want to subtract at least 1 point from our health, because our health isn't too high right now. I believe it's 10 by default. And then if we say if current health less than or equal to 0, so have we gone past our health allocation, then we want to say destroy our prop. So let's go ahead and actually implement our destroy method. And there's a destroy. So I'll just make sure that gets called. Okay. Now the trigger is going to act in a very similar fashion. So if it's not destroyed and is trigger enabled, and now we're going to say other actor hashtag of player, then we want to trigger some sort of event on our destructible component. So again, we're going to add a tag to our player that just labels him as player, so anything else that overlaps this trigger will not get into our destroy. And all we're going to do is just trigger our destroy when this trigger is overlapped. So let's recompile and now start tying things together. Okay, so our project is recompiled. Let's go ahead and add these tags to our various components so we can see how they behave. Okay, so we're going to go back to our editor, and then I'm going to go over to our third-person blueprint. And for our third-person character, on the right-hand side, we're going to look for tags under our actor, and we're going to say player. So now we've tagged our player definition with this one tag, wherever it went, there it is. And we're going to do the same thing for our left melee and our right melee collision boxes. So we're going to look for tag again, and we're going to say weapon, and we're going to tag this again, and just say weapon. Okay, let's recompile and save, and just double check our our component, make sure everything still looks okay here. And we're simulating physics by default. We're generating our events by default. Okay, so I think we may be okay. Let's play this and see what it looks like. Okay, so there's our guy. Run into it, falls apart. But our collision is not working. Oh, there it goes. Our log messages are not showing up. So let's figure out why that's not working. Okay, so the reason our collisions were not working, or rather the delegates were not being picked up, is I forgot to decorate these methods with ufunction. So the engine wasn't recognizing them as internal delegate methods, and nothing was happening. So I'm just going to add those guys in, and we're also going to add a little bit of additional logic to our damage, so we're not spewing out log messages for everything that connects with our object, but rather only those type of weapon, and we'll leave our trigger as is. Our destroy so far is not going to do anything. It's just going to print out a message. Let's recompile and see what it looks like. Okay, so our project is recompiled. Let's see how our pillars are doing now. So there we go. If I run into the area of our trigger, we get our trigger notifications. And now, if I hit something, I also get my right melee collision. Left melee is me trying to kick the debris on the floor. Okay, so our delegates are now working correctly. Now let's go ahead and create a few more of these pillars and just play around with them, see how things are behaving. Okay, so I've gone ahead and created a couple of these pillars here all over the level, and now you'll notice when we hit them, or rather run into them, they just fall over, but nothing really happens. When we punch them, it registers our punch, collision, and then it triggers our destroy. But you'll notice nothing is really happening with these guys. And the reason nothing's happening with them, they're just falling over, is because on our mesh, on our destructible mesh, we set the impact damage to be 0. If we set this to, let's say, 2, you'll see the minute they fall down, they just fall apart, because I have physics set on these meshes. So that's not super helpful. So let's go ahead and I also have to set it to 1. If we set this to, let's say, 4, they still break. Because we're basically saying impact damage is independent of my health. So when it gets applied to the destructible mesh here, it has no awareness of what I'm trying to do within my destructible prop. So we're going to correct that. Let's go back to our code. And now for the destroy, we can go ahead and say, hey, if I am not destroyed, we always want to double check that. We can then say is destroyed equals true. And then we can also say destructible component apply damage. So the apply damage is the same as the impact damage we had defined on our mesh, except now we get to pass in our own parameters. So let's just take a look at this method signature again. And it takes in a damage amount, a hit location, an impulse direction, as well as an impulse strength. So we have these cool parameters already defined for damage and impulse, and all we're missing are the location as well as the impulse direction. So let's go ahead and pass in default damage as the first parameter. We'll leave the location for now, and the impulse direction as well. And then we're going to say default impulse. Okay, so now we have a little bit of more information that we need to find for our destroy method. So we're going to say float damage. And we're going to say f vector for the, actually, you know what, I'm going to say hit location. So there's our hit location, and there's our damage. Then we're going to have another vector for our impulse direction, as well as our impulse strength. And I'm going to change these guys. So there are a couple of additional method parameters that we need to pass in now. And I'm just going to go ahead and update our destroy method signature right here. And now we can say, okay, for the trigger, when we pass in our damage, we're going to say default damage. Our hit location for the trigger is going to be right at the location of where this object is located, or where this object is currently sitting. So we're going to say destructible component get component location. Our hit location is going to be, you know, we're going to do the forward vectored. And there's going to be our default impulse strength. Okay, so there is the destroy for the trigger, and let's do the destroy for the damage. So when this is being applied. This is going to be very similar. We're going to say this is our default damage. And we're going to say for our, actually, hit location, for our location, our normal impulse is going to be where our impulse is going. And then we're going to pass in the default impulse as our parameter. Okay, so now on any damage hit, we should properly do something and then apply our damage ourselves, likewise on the trigger. So let's recompile and see what this looks like. Okay, our project is recompiled. Now let's go back to our game. So there's our pillars. Nothing too exciting. We hit them. You see, just we don't even need to run in. We just trigger the behavior and our thing falls apart. Except for this guy, I'm not sure why he's not falling apart. But I am not sure why this guy doesn't want to fall apart. Let's try this again. Is he perhaps... Oh, he's stuck. There we go. Now, if I just run by them... There we go. Look at that. So I'm just running by them. Our triggers are being triggered. And these things are just collapsing. Okay, so this guy must be stuck in the ground just a little bit too. Let's try that again. Make sure every one of them falls down. Those guys are down, 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 down. Good. Okay, so that all works. Now let's go ahead and turn off the triggers. So if we go back to our class defaults, we're going to disable our triggers. And now, you know, if we run into these pillars, nothing happens. We're still showing the trigger message. That's just because I should have put in a different conditional. Okay, so that works. Now we punch them. They should fall apart. And they're not falling apart because, oh, our max health is 4. Our default damage is 1, so obviously I need to hit it 4 times before anything happens. So let's make this guy 1 and 1, and that means every hit should now cause this thing to break. Bam. Oh, I can't aim. Oh my goodness. There we go. Falling apart. Kick it. Where did it go? Oh, that was weird. There we go. So obviously if I knock it over, nothing happens. Our old box still does its own thing. And our pillars fall down quite nicely. So let me come back in a few minutes, and I'm going to create a few more props based on all of this logic. And we're going to just change them up a little bit by introducing also a radial impulse. And that way we can create some interesting explosions. Okay, let's take a look. Alright guys, so I've gone ahead and added in a handful of props to our environment. We have some of these pillars, kind of look like Trump's wall, what he's trying to do. And if we run by them, they're going to explode and collapse. So let's take a look at that. Nice. So all I did is with one blueprint just copied over and over, and then as we enter the trigger area, they blow up nicely. Let's just restart that, and then we can kind of go one by one if we want to. Oh, and our rock fell over, and it's knocking stuff down, but that's okay. Man, that's 1, 2. The one on the ground should explode next. And we can also smash this rock. There. Rock smashed. Nothing too crazy about the rock. I could just hit it. There we go. Explodes really well. Now the balls, they have physicality on them because we want to be able to roll them around and do stuff with them before they actually smash apart. And they've got 3 health. So if we hit it a couple of times, there we go. They fall apart nicely. They spawn a little electric sound effect, as well as some sparks. Bam. Look at that. And if I run by these items, whatever I didn't trigger previously is going to blow up now. Good. So, very quickly we were able to create a handful of these destructible props. Some more exciting than others. But all of them work fairly easily once you have this base destructible class going. Just smash this last one. There we go. We'll get these rocks. And... come on. Oh, there. Alright. What a right mess. And you can see the rocks spawn little dust particles, which you can just barely see, just for some additional effects. Alright, so let's run through the wall one more time, because I really enjoy doing that. Makes for some fun effects if you have, you know, like the classic Resident Evil 2. You go down the hallway, and the windows smash and dogs jump out of them. You know, so now you can trigger these types of effects using a little bit of Destructibles and overlap components. So, thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope to see you guys next time.